much for coming through on this day. My name is Stacey, and I am a consultant for small businesses, founders, and organizations that are trying to grow by fixing their operations. The one thing that people don't think it matters in their businesses is how your business functions on the back end. So I'm the person that loves all that stuff. So I'm here to support you and your business, your organization to succeed. Now, my work, I'm focusing on helping more women-centered businesses in these next few months. And the post today, right? If we're so capable, or the question that came to mind because of thinking about how women, I'm talking from my point of view, and let me make sure I put this on Do Not Disturb. Give me one sec so it doesn't start ringing out of nowhere. Yeah, so how we have a tendency to be overqualified and very capable, but why is it that we are not going anywhere, right? And when I say not going anywhere, it may look different for some people, right? Because then you may have the career of your dreams or do what you need to do, but you still feel overwhelmed, overextended, and that puts you in a place where you're very capable and you know it. And that's one thing that as a woman I can say, we know that we're smart, right? People tell us that we're smart, we know, but that doesn't mean a thing, because if that was important, we wouldn't be experiencing all these downs that we're experiencing, like the overextension, like I said, the overwhelming feelings, the burnout and things like that. Because one thing I'm realizing as I get older is capability does not mean that you're going to be successful. Capability or being capable does not equal an outcome. You may have the capabilities. Think about how many times you applied for a job that you were overqualified for, and someone who does not have half of the knowledge you have got the job. So that's what I want you to think about when I say this, is that capability does not equal outcome. Capability does not equal success, right? And capability in most instances ends up being a trap for high functioning women, right? It ends up being a trap because overperforming. Why does this GPS keep turning on? Yeah, we have a tendency to overperform to compensate for certain things, right? So there's one thing I want you to remember, because remember the field I'm in, right? I focus on operations and system. When you have a lack of structure within your profession, within your business, within your life, what you start doing is overperforming to compensate for that lack of structure. So let's say that you do not have a process in place for how certain things are done within your business, right? Let's say onboarding, because onboarding is very important, because when you bring somebody new onto your team, you need to make sure they're onboarded properly, where they have the tools necessary to conduct the work that is needed for the organization, for the business, to ensure it goes to the next step. Now, let's say onboarding is not up to par, where you bring this person in, and all that you're giving to them is the stuff that's required by the state. Now what happens is that when that person comes into a scenario, or like something that happens, right, that you're familiar with but you did not include as a scenario on your onboarding, or you're not put that thing in there, right? That person, what ends up happening is that person is not equipped to deal with it. So what ends up happening is that you start overperforming to ensure that this person succeeds. But what it does, it adds a layer, it adds another gorilla to your back. There's no easier way to say this. It just makes your job harder, because now you need to overperform for the lack of structure that exists under the surface. So that's what I mean by that. And not only that, I posted an article on Substack. I have it open because so many things in there that I started writing last night and posted it early this morning, right? There's many women, many of us, we spent our lives proving just how capable we are. That's why a lot of I don't I've never been someone to brag about my accomplishments or to post what I've done. It's only recently that the game has to be played. People love that stuff, right? People love to show their accomplishments, right? And share what they've done and things like that. So we spend our lives proving just how capable we are, whether through education, work, parenting. I'm a good mom, right? I'm a good project director. I'm a good project manager. I'm a good boss. All of these things. Like, whatever your narrative is, I want you to start thinking about it, right? Start thinking about what your narrative is of how you've been proving that you're capable and how you've been overextending yourself trying to prove how you're capable, even in leadership and entrepreneurship, caregiving, all of that. I sacrificed my career for you. You know, these are examples. These are examples that I want you to like take a minute and think about an example of your life where you spent so much time trying to prove how capable you are, right? As a woman. Now, not only that, as women, we are constantly demonstrating our ability to carry responsibility and produce results because we can carry a lot on our backs as women, but does that mean that we have to? And that's the thing. A lot of folks are stuck. A lot. I find out. I like to go on social media and read the comments and see where people's mind is at because sometimes the way people think just makes me want to go back to bed. Right. So I want you to understand that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can carry the responsibility of 5 people does not mean you should. And because you do that, yes, results happen, but at your detriment. At your detriment. Because there are smarter ways to go about it. And even data shows that we as women put ourselves in these positions where we carry much of the work and load in some instances because data shows that women we earn the majority of bachelor's master's degrees, right, even doctoral degrees in the US, right, and women continue starting businesses, right, entering leadership roles, managing households, raising families, and contributing to organizations at every level. So we're there. We show up, right? We show up. We know we're capable, but we're not where we want to be. Because if we were, then we wouldn't be fighting still against certain things like equal pay, right? We wouldn't be fighting Roe v. Wade. We wouldn't be fighting certain things, right? So capability is not the issue. And that's where we need to make that distinction. And that's where um, I'm coming from because we spend too many years believing that if we just become more capable, right, everything will fall into place, more skills, more degrees, more certifications. And every time I meet someone that tells me that I'm going back to school to learn this so I can get a better job, why don't you have a better job right now? Because more skill, more certificates. There are people that have no degrees that have senior jobs. Why is it that the other gender, right? There's some people that do it without having to prove how capable they are. So, what is it? I want you to think about what is it in your life? What is the structure that's missing to put you in the position where you don't have to jump through dolphin to prove how capable you are because you already know you are. People know you are. You okay, you might not know you are, but people know you are. You just need to internalize it and understand that, right? So capability is not the issue. And that's where we want to get away from from thinking that capability is the biggest issue here and start thinking about structure. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, right? Because when we don't focus on capability as the main issue in this entire What it does not do, it does not automatically create wealth for you. It does not create stability. It does not create freedom. It does not create peace. It does not create sustainable success. Because capability is just one thing, right? It's great to be capable, but as long as you're consistent, disciplined, and you can do certain things well, whether you're capable or not is does not matter, because in this age of AI, and so people are not even capable of doing it better than you are, and that's just the honest truth. Because if you start thinking about, a lot of people have the audacity, and that's where you're going to need to reach these levels of success in your life, to get the outcomes that you need. You need to be audacious and understand that just being capable is not enough, right? You can be capable all you want, but that's not going to pay the bills. That's not going to do anything for you. So you need to start thinking about what it is that you need to start securing for yourself to ensure that you reach these different levels of success that we're talking about, right? So when you find yourself frustrated because you see that there is a gap that exists between how capable you are and the outcomes you're seeking, then you need to sit down and get yourself out of that trap, because that's what you need to start doing. The income, if your income is not where it needs to be, then you need to start thinking about how to get yourself out of there too, because your capability is not the problem, right? If your business is not where it needs to be, again, not capability. That's what is happening on the back end of your business that is preventing it from going in the direction that it needs to go, right? So all of these things, you can be incredibly capable and still have a business that's not doing well. You still struggle financially. So all of these things matter in the big scheme of things, right? Because intelligence, capability, those are just one thing. I've met I've met people that don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. They regurgitate what they hear on podcast and just absorb it really well so they can spew it out. So if you ask them questions that make them think deeper, because that's one thing I'm very skilled at, you do not want to have a deep conversation with me if you cannot be objective and think outside the box. Because when you start poking holes, I poke holes at somebody's logic about certain things, because then I have a friend who loves politics, right? And making statements about why a person is not a good fit. And that's why I want you to realize capability is not everything, right? Because some people are not capable, but they're very successful. Because then talking to me about politics, and then when I ask questions about, okay, if that's what you would do differently, because it was about programs that exist, how they would cut it, whatnot. But then one thing they don't get is that some programs that exist or some fees that exist are revenue for the city you live in or for the state you live in. So when you take those away, how is the city or state going to bring revenue for to support the programs you do want to keep, right? They didn't understand that concept, so they started glitching. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to realize that people are good at regurgitating. That does not mean they're capable. And you have to get to a point where you also challenge yourself to think out of the box, because it's that belief that you're the smartest person in the room that will keep you at the bottom. Okay. So I want you to challenge yourself into figuring out how to get out of this arena that you've been in, thinking that your capability was going to get you in those rooms that you want to be in, because that's not enough, right? What's enough, what you need to realize, that you need to think about what your capability is built on. And that's one thing I also wrote about in my Substack. So please, please, please go read that article. What's it's actually built on? Because I continue talking about um, capability is something that we notice a lot in high functioning women. And if you're not familiar with the term, right? And I even share that in the article. I can say that I speak on this because I am a very high functioning woman, and that's a toxic trait of mine. I will say it's a toxic trait because when as a woman who has had to be very resilient her whole life, from living in Haiti to being in a very um, toxic marriage and going through a toxic divorce, resilience is a skill I've had to build, right? I worked 3 jobs at a point in my marriage, so it's like I've had to figure out how to be a very high functioning person and not give up, right? So you have to think about the qualities that help women succeed early in life, because then resilience is one of them, right? We have to be resilient early in life. We have to be people pleasers so we don't get the door shut in our faces. So we we have to learn to adapt quickly, right? That responsibility we carry, oftentimes, right, it becomes a way for us to compensate for weaknesses or things we should have addressed long ago. So sometimes that ability, we feel like it's a strength, but it is not. Because if we have to carry all these responsibilities, that means we have a lack of boundary that we need to address. Because why am I carrying somebody else's responsibility when I can tell them that's not my job, that's yours? Because then I am making excuses or letting them, I don't want to say letting them get away, but then when you do that, you're making it okay for this person not to stay accountable for what they're responsible for. And that's not okay. And that's just, that's what I have to say about that. It's not okay. So you have to think about what doing that does to you and what it does to your environment. What is it supporting, right? And what is it protecting? Because then these are things that you're doing at this point. You're protecting and sustaining certain behaviors that are detrimental to you. Okay. So eventually, what you're going to have to do is test the structure underneath what you see as you being capable, right? Because it's like the structure is not your intelligence, it's not your potential, it's not your credentials, it's not even talent. You have to think about the structure underneath it all, right? How do you react? How do you deal with certain things when they come about? Because then it has nothing to do with whether or not you have the qualifications to do it. It's how do you handle it? What's the structure underneath it? Like I was talking about, if somebody is not doing their job and you pick up the mantle, how do you handle when somebody does that? Do you say, hey, I noticed this needed to be done. Can you please get it done by XYZ time because I need this to do this? That is, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing mean with that. You are setting a boundary so the person understand that they need to stay accountable for what they're responsible for. So you have to think about the structure, little things like that that affect the entire structure. And when I talk about structure, you also have to think about, we're talking about business and careers and profession now. So think about job responsibilities. Is that your job responsibility to do? Are they clearly defined, right? If they're not clearly defined and the person does not know what their job is, that makes sense. So that's why I say you have to think about the structure underneath it all. Because if this person is responsible for sending a report to, I don't know, some stakeholder, but then they're not there and the report was supposed to be sent last week, what was the process here? Were they supposed to get a reminder? Did you have any type of structure in place to ensure this was done on time? Do you have anything in place that says who's responsible for it if this person is out of the office? How you get that information to have that report ready? So you have to think about the structure, because your skills, your certificates, your degrees are not going to matter when push comes to shoves about those kind of things, right? And that's where high functioning women run into problems, because they feel like they have to compensate overcompensate for a lot of things by doing all of by performing under pressure. Like, let's say that person's gone. Oh, okay, I'll do it because then this is going to be, a hard task. I'm going to do it. No, no. Now you're just telling your nervous system it's okay to deal with this BS when you don't have to, because then you're increasing your stress for what? For what? Okay. Because yes, we're able to adapt quickly, but it should not be self imposed. Like, that level of stress should not be self imposed. Because then, yes, we've had to figure things out. Yes, we've had to adapt quickly. Yes, we have to solve problems, but that's all part of the game. But you have to be very clear on what's okay and what's not okay, and what structures you have in place to prevent all of these things from happening. Okay, because there are some things that should not happen that you need to have a structure around to ensure they're not happening under your watch. And even think about your household. Household is how many women can think about it. Let's say you're a mom, right? You're responsible for, let's say you have 11 and 12-year olds. You're responsible for making sure everybody gets to school on time. You're responsible for checking their homework, but they are responsible for their homework. So, do you have structures in place to ensure that they know to do their homework and bring it to you? Because the other thing that we're not paying attention to is the mental load of having to remind everybody on what they need to do. Because you need to teach these things in your household to make sure that children are not taking advantage of you carrying the labor that they should be doing. Okay, so these are things, that's just an example I wanted to give around the household so you can kind of see where I'm coming from, because structure needs to be in every aspect of your life if you want it to run smoothly. Okay, so that's the example I was going to give there. Um, so in terms of high functioning women, that's the two cents I had, and that's one of the biggest trap that a high functioning woman will fall into is becoming the system. Mom is a reminder. Mom is the alarm clock. Mom wakes me up. Mom does this. Mom does that at work. Hey, Stacy's gonna do this because Stacy knows how to do it. How to do it. Stacy does this, Stacy does that. That's because there's no SOPs in place, nothing to teach people how to do a certain job if I'm not around. If you're home and you're the one waking up everybody, that's because you've fallen into a trap of becoming the system. Now everything runs through you. And a lot of people, it's ego because they want to feel needed. But the people that say they're burnt out and overwhelmed, that's because you never took time to put these structures in place to ensure, or systems in place to ensure that you're not becoming the system. Because for high functioning women, that's the part that I want you to be mindful of. You do not want to become the system. Okay, and many of us are actually pretty resilient. We're pretty good at it, right? And that's a great trait. We're capable, resilient, and adaptable, but it takes years before we realize that we fell into the trap of becoming the system. Okay, you hold everything together. You be because someone forgot to do it. Okay, or you're solving problems before they escalate because you can see it happening and you start solving problems before they become an issue. So all of these things is what I'm talking about, and over time people begin relying on you because you're dependable, because you have more responsibility than you should, and they know it, right? And at first, a lot of people take it as a compliment. That's why I abhor the moniker of Superwoman. I don't want it. Keep it. I don't want it. I'm not trying to be Superwoman. I'm trying to be a woman living her life, raising her children, and living her best life. There we go. Like, why are you giving me the moniker Superwoman? I don't want to be doing 1,001 things because you refuse to do your part. Okay? So, the compliment, you're so strong. You can do all of these and still be a good wife. Y'all, I look at people say that and I suck my teeth. I'm like, that's not a compliment. That's basically telling you that It wouldn't be me. Because some people just look at you and say it couldn't be me because they know, like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And some folks know it's a lot. Okay. I understand you take it as a compliment because people would trust you in your judgment, but at at what cost? And you might not see it as a cost, but there's a reason that you think, and you have to think about what being very high functioning is costing you. For those who know me for a while, I do not. I may work hard to give my children everything they need, but that's because I know these kids did not ask to be here, and I will do everything in my power to be there for them and give them everything they need, right? No matter how tired I am, how upset I am at the world, or whatever is happening, I am going to do my best and stand on my 10 toes and do what I need to do for these babies, my two babies, okay? So, when you are a high functioning woman, you need to remember that you need to make the difference between being capable and being the system that everybody relies on. Okay? So, that's the part I'm going to talk about first because that's the issue with high functioning women that are capable but become the system. Okay? So, I know I got to leave soon, so I just wanted to just say a few more things, right? Now, becoming the system, it feels good at first because everybody's depending on you. And that's why I said, like, some people like it. And I've even met men that feel like they're the boss because everybody's going to ask them questions. But if it starts depending entirely on you, what happens when something happens to you? Because life will life. People pass away at a randomly because you don't know when your time is coming. So what happens when something unexpected happens? Because then if you're building a business or building a legacy, you don't want that to fall apart because you're not building a legacy if you're willing to let it fall apart because you're gone or something happens to you. No, you have to build it to ensure that it survives even when you're gone, right? So it does not have to do with capability. Capability has nothing to do with it. It will help you solve problems, help you get through doors, help deal with some crazy things over time, right? But that's not it. Structure is what I need people to focus on. That's what I need you to focus on some more. What is the structure underneath the business? What's your operation looking like? Do you have systems in place? What does that look like? And even when I talk about high functioning women, structure is what is going to help women like you succeed in life, because if we have the structure to guide us, and I know some other coaches that help women in their personal lives with creating structure and systems around their personal life. Me, I just help businesses and organizations with that, but it goes across the board. If a process breaks and you have structure, you can fix that. You can fix that. Okay. And if you don't, well, you shouldn't have to fix it if you have structure. If you don't have structure, you end up fixing it every time it breaks. But if you have a level of structure, then probably wouldn't break. If it broke, then you would fix that system or whatever to make sure it doesn't happen again. Like, and these are things I want you to think about because you need to start thinking about how to make the process go smoother in your life or business in general. Okay. So your business can become profitable, your life can go a little bit smoother as a high functioning woman, right? Entrepreneur and things like that. So these are things I want you to think about. You don't want to become the go-to person that handles everything You don't want to become the business, because when you become the business, if you're running an organization or business, then it becomes overwhelming because everything stops when you're going through a bad time, or when you're experiencing something, or when you're on vacation, and that's not what you want to happen. You want your business to work even if you're not around. So you need to create structure around your business or organization. If you have a nonprofit that as soon as you walk out, nothing can happen, that's not a nonprofit, that's your project. That's your project that you put money in and that now you get grants for, but as soon as you walk away, those grant monies can't do anything. That's not okay. So that's what I want you to think about. Okay? So you can get out of the period of exhaustion that you're experiencing, get out of the unexpected, like problems that you're experiencing, right? You need to start establishing boundaries, creating accountability, right? Documenting the knowledge that exists within the company, within the business, within the organization, so you can have these structures in place, because structure can create stability for a business, an organization, to ensure that it's succeeding, okay? And it won't prevent life from happening. It will actually help sustain the business or organization when life is happening. And that's what needs to be considered when push comes to shove. Okay, so that's all I have, and that's where I'm gonna stop right now because it's 1:30, so I gotta go. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. Me and lives, like, I think that's one goal I'm gonna have, is try to stay longer. But one thing I'm gonna say, you have to think about whether or not you want to be the center of everything, like issues and success, because that's not sustainable, or you want to actually build something that lasts. If you're into building something that lasts, like a business, an organization that lasts, then you need to focus on the operations and how things go in the back end, right? So if this is something you're interested in, definitely book a business operations audit with us at SAVJ Coaching Consulting, so we can help you figure out what the gaps are within your business or organization, so we can help you figure out what needs to be corrected so it can support your business or organization. But with that said, I'm going to let you go. And please let me know if you have any questions. Comment with any questions. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And have an amazing day. Bye, y'all.